Hi everyone, welcome to our lesson 41. My name is Professor Robert. In today's lesson, we will learn factoring a trinomial completely. So we will be learning factoring a trinomial com- completely. So again, as usual, we'll look at an example or two. Let's look at the first example, one. Let's suppose you are given 10x y plus 24y squared minus 6x squared. When you are given such an expression or such a trinomial and you're supposed to factor it completely, first of all, look at the coefficients of our terms and get to see what's common in between. Now, 10 can be 2 times 5, 24 can be 2 times 12, and then 6 can be 3 times 2. So you find that 2 is a common factor. But since we have negative and positives, we can say let's bring out the negative 2 as the common factor for the coefficients that we have in the expression. That will leave us with 3x squared, because minus 2 multiplied by 3x squared will give us minus 6x squared. And then we would have minus 5xy, which when multiplied by minus 2 will give us 10xy. And then you will have here minus 12y squared, because minus 12y squared multiplied by negative 2 will give us positive 24y. Now we then need to concentrate on this right hand side part of our expression and see how we can break it up into two. Now this is where the whole exercise becomes a little bit tricky, in the sense that we ought to look at the first expression here with x squared and say, how do we break it into two? Because ultimately we need to have two parentheses being multiplied together. So how do we break this into two factors, which when multiplied together will give us 3x squared? Apparently it should be 3x multiplied by x. But of course, we have to put our minus 2 out there so that we don't forget it. Then we will have to look for two values, or two values which when multiplied together will give us this last expression here. We have to look for two factors when multiplied together will give us 12y. And those two factors will be 4y, for example, and 3y. But they could also be 6y and 2y. Or it could be 12y and y. Now, this is where now we have to try and error. But it's always better to look for a much more spread out uh, uh, factor, other than these that are isolated. You need to get closer factors other than the factors that are, spread out. But you can anyway begin from anywhere, depending on what you want. So let's suppose we have 4y placed here. Certainly, 3y will be placed here. But remember, we have a negative value here. We have a negative value here for our 12y squared. So one of these has to be negative. One of these has to be negative. Now, if one is negative, the other one must be positive because 4y times minus 3y should give us what we want here. And then we go ahead to try this out and see what we get. So we say 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times minus 3y will be minus 9xy. And then y times x here will give us positive 4xy. And then 4y times negative 3y, as we saw earlier on, will be 12y squared. And we can clearly see that these two are similar. So minus x, this is 9xy plus 4xy will leave us with minus 5xy. And we have our 3x squared brought down. And then here we also have our minus 12y squared brought down. And of course, to get back to our original expression, we have to bring down our minus 2, which will be that. So we have proven that by factoring our initial trinomial, we now have this as our final result. We have this as our final result, which is minus 2 into 3x plus 4 into x minus 3y. All right? Okay. Good. Now let's try example 2. Let's try a second example 2. This one might be a little bit tricky, but still similar. Let's suppose we have 6x squared minus 15xy minus 6y squared. Again, we need to look at the coefficients here. And we find that actually 3 really works well here. But because we have negatives in there, let's actually bring out the minus 3. This will leave us with 2x squared. And this will be plus 5xy. And this will be plus 2y squared. Again, we now try to break this down into two factors. We need to factor this expression here. And we'll have two pair of parentheses drawn out. So again, here we have 2x squared. So the two factors, when multiplied together to give us 2x squared, will be 2x and x. And then when we look at the last expression here, y squared, we will have 2y times y. Okay, so we have 2y times y. Now, in this case, since x, the entire expression has got positives, therefore we must have positives. And so we have 2x. We have to choose whether to have y in the first parenthesis or to have 2y. So again, this try and erroring. You have to try and error and see what you will get. Let's suppose we have y here and we have 2y here. Then we can try to distribute or to multiply these two factors out and see whether we get back what we have out there. So 2x times x will give us 2x squared. Okay, we have it there already. Then 2x times 2y will give us 4 x y. Okay, and then y times x will give us x y. Okay, and you can now see the picture coming out. 4x plus xy is going to give us 5xy. Then finally, y times 2y will give us 2y squared. So true, this expression will then become 2x squared plus 5xy plus 2y squared. Of course, we can't forget to remember uh, our minus 3. So that means that have after having factorized this expression on the right, we have to remember our first factor we had, and this will be our final answer. This will be our final answer. Minus 3 into 2x plus y into positive 2y. Okay, now if this lesson helped you, don't forget to like, share with anyone you think needs it, and subscribe for more algebra made simple. Okay, see you in the next lesson, and bye for now.